Britain has ditched the EU's help to feed the poor, despite 500,000 citizens, including children, turning to charities this year to stave off the hunger. The opposition's criticised the government for gasping with pride and ignoring the problem. Laura Smith has the story.
Just a stone's throw from the seat of government in Westminster is something that's becoming a more and more common sight in the UK. This building's used as a food bank, handing out emergency supplies to families so poor they can't afford to eat. As the cost of living rises, the number of people turning to food banks increases with it. Funding's tighter all the time. But nevertheless, the government has turned down a potential £22 million in funding for food aid. Why? Because the money comes from the European Union.
In Britain, we've got a government with a very anti-European ideology that appears to be more keen to not want Europe to get credit for something than to get money which can help feed hungry people. If you are starving, you need some food on your plate today, and this government's refusal to claim the EU cash is literally taking food out of the mouths of the hungry.
The European Aid for the Most Deprived Fund amounts to £2.5 billion. But the position Britain's taken means the country will receive just £2.9 million. And instead of using that for food aid as intended, it's expected the government will spend it on helping unemployed people find work. All well and good, say critics, but there are people who need survival basics now, and this money is meant for them. My colleague Polly Boyko has been to meet one of the unlucky many.
We've got the rice. It's humiliating at first because you're having to go to somebody else to say, please, can you help me? I need some food.
Andrew's sick. On top of diabetes, he has a heart condition and emphysema. As part of the benefits shake-up, Andrew's disability living allowance was taken away because the government deemed him fit to work. Living on his partner's wage alone has pushed their budget over the brink. Over the past 18 months, they've had to turn to their local food bank 6 times.
I felt like I had had the rug pulled from underneath my feet. I was having to go to somebody else to try and help me survive. And it's not a nice feeling. I nearly ended up in tears. I nearly ended up really like a nervous wreck.
The stereotype of who goes hungry is changing. Rising inflation and energy prices, coupled with stagnant wages, means that incomes in many working households can't even cover the essentials. This is the food bank that Andrew had to turn to after he told his local doctor that he couldn't afford to eat. Now, it says here that hunger isn't just a third world problem, and the figures confirm it. This year, between the months of April and December, 500,000 people had to turn to food banks for emergency supplies. That's almost double the figure from last year. This winter, the British Red Cross started collecting food aid to help the UK's hungry for the first time since the Second World War.
As a humanitarian organisation, we were more and more concerned about people suffering from food poverty within our services. And we were seeing more and more people presenting with issues around food and not enough to eat.
We have made cuts too deep and too far, and they are now having very, very serious social consequences. And at the moment, things show every sign of continuing to get worse, not getting better.
In Grantham, we get a tour of Andrew's local food bank. We see volunteers delivering bags, as well as clients turning up for emergency supplies. We're asked not to film the customers because of their distressing circumstances.
There is a sense that it feels like it's starting to move back to, a after-war situation where there is a big divide coming in. Those that have more, and those that don't have much have less.
On average, 3 new food banks open every week in the UK. The number of people turning to them is heading towards 1 million.
You find yourself in a situation where you're like begging for food when there's no need to, really. We're surviving still. How long for? is another matter.
Food banks used to serve a tiny minority. There's now one in every area. They're mainstream. And for many of those struggling to make ends meet, the only lifeline left is charity. Polly Boyko, RT, London.